Okay, so I suppose this is the first run of Valuethon here, so welcome everybody. I'm going to be running Super Metroid, Super Nintendo, any percent. This run has a lot of cool techniques in it and a lot of depth to it that I'm going to try to hopefully be able to explain all of it in real time as I'm playing. Firstly, I'm just going to set my controller, and then we're going to get going here. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. What's nice about Super Metroid is the controls are, for the most part, completely customizable. It's got a lot of different control schemes that they're already used. Not everyone uses the same one, and there's no best one. It's all about comfort, which is nice. So we're going to start off with Series Station here. This is kind of like a little introduction in the game. We're just going to kind of run through. I'm going to talk about arm pumping here. So every time I move Samus's cannon, he advances forward a pixel, and it's just used, to save some frames here and there in rooms where it's not going to be a big deal. So here we're just going to wait for Ridley, and you either shoot Ridley 100 times, or you just take damage down to critical before Ridley will leave. And it's a lot faster to just take the damage. If shooting Ridley 100 times takes forever. Now we're going to start Series Escape. There's RNG involved, it's not too big of a deal usually. The idea is we're going to be running back through everything, and then there's going to be steam, and we're going to try and react to and dodge the steam and stuff and get through. So the nice thing about Super Metroid is we don't watch the intro because the game auto-saves after the intro, so we just use a file that's auto-saved after the intro. Otherwise we'd be waiting like 5 minutes in between attempts, and that's no fun. But for a Super Nintendo game, for a platformer, there's a lot of depth to this game, just in how you move Samus around and stuff. When you're starting for the first time, the controls and the physics are definitely a little tricky to deal with, but like once you've started to master them and stuff, you have pretty much complete control of Samus. You can do whatever you want, honestly. And it becomes a lot of depth to everything going on. There's a lot of hitbox manipulation I do in this run. So when Samus is standing straight up, her hitbox is the tallest, but if she's in a spin jump or aiming down, her hitbox contracts. And you can use that to skip platforms and stuff. So here I'm going to do a trick called, oh, I missed it. But here I'm going to aim down to contract her hitbox so she falls. And then here I'm going to be doing a trick called Moonfall. Basically, use the moonwalk and you do things in a specific manner and it uncaps your fall speed. You can just fall down really, really quickly. That one's the big one. There's some other ones that save some time, but most of them save on, 20-ish frames, and they're not too big of a deal. Other things that I'm doing are I'm actually expanding my hitbox when I'm above a ledge, because when Samus is in spin jump, her hitbox is smaller than when she's unspun. So what I do is I expand my hitbox on purpose so that I snap the ledge, and it's referred to as a ledge grab. I'm basically doing that almost everywhere in order to land on ledges sooner after I jump up them. And here we're just kind of getting the early items here, your missiles, and we're going to go back up and get bombs. And this is kind of just the beginning, the early game. But it's also one of the hardest sections of the run to do mechanically, because there's just so much tricky platforming. And coming up here, we're going to have the pit room, and we're going to have the climb and the parlor. The climb and the parlor are probably two of the most mechanically intensive rooms in the run, and they're right off the bat, and they're back to back. There's a lot of tricky movement involved in them, and there's a lot of optimizations in them that you, honestly, even in real-time runs, you miss out on just from playing the room aggressively. Whoa. goodness gracious. So you see here, I'm basically ledge grabbing all these ledges, as I was explaining earlier, and it's a way to save a ton of time, but the thing about it is doing it optimally is also rather risky, obviously. There's a lot of room to just like improve your fundamentals and get really good at movement in this game. So coming up to Bomb Treezo. What Bomb Treezo is going to do is I'm going to stand on a specific spot in the room, and I'm going to make Bomb Treezo jump back immediately. And from there, I'm going to shoot Bomb Treezo 5 times, and then grab missiles, because basically what I'm trying to do is avoid Bomb Treezo's head falling off. Because Bomb Treezo has 800 health, and when Bomb Treezo goes below 100 health, his head falls off. And there's like an animation where he's invulnerable and stuff when his head's falling off. And since missiles deal 100 damage, if you get Bomb Treezo down to exactly 100 health and fire a missile, he'll die before that head falling off animation happens. This room's called Terminator. We're just going to kind of make our way through it. It's going to be important here that we leave here with a decent number of missiles, because we're going to be killing these pirates coming up. You want to kill these pirates coming up just to save health, because we're going to be going to Phantoon first, and taking a ton of extra damage is not really a good idea. That was actually incredibly unlucky. But, so we also need some missiles coming up, too, to hit a red door, because red doors take 5 missiles. So we also need to get a drop there, because there's going to be 2 enemies here that we can farm very quickly for missiles that are pretty much guaranteed missile drops. So you want to kill them and then wait for a missile drop, which is what makes it slower than just running through them, but the health saved is significantly worth it. This is the first sequence break coming up. It's called the Mach Ball. Basically, if you morph and kind of into a quarter circle, you can maintain your momentum while rolling. And what this does is it lets us get under those gates there, because generally if you try to roll across crumble blocks, you'll just fall. And those gates, you usually need speed booster to get through them, so you can run really quickly under them. But by being able to Mach Ball, we can just get under them right away and get super missiles, which lets us completely skip a boss. And we're just going to be making our way over here into Big Pink, as it's lovingly called. And in Big Pink, we're going to be picking up another missile pack, and we're going to be picking up Charge Beam. These missiles aren't necessarily needed, but they're rather important, because we're going to be fighting Phantoon, and you want a lot of missiles to fight Phantoon, do it quickly. And then Charge Beam is super important, because we're going to be using it to kill bosses. You don't need it to kill bosses, you can kill them with ammo, but then that requires picking up a ton of ammo that we're not going to want to pick up. That's really slow. But then as you can see with all the movement options in this game, you can start chaining things with like Mach Balls and other things to keep your momentum. And then there's also a technique in this game called a damage boost. So if you take damage while holding jump, and then you press the D-pad after you get hit during the knockback in the opposite direction that Samus is facing, she will do a D-boost, and this is an intended mechanic in the game because it has its own animation and everything. So then D-boosts are also used everywhere to just, chain different movement techniques together to get through rooms. And this is where the route that I'm currently doing, the colloquially new route, diverges. Generally, a lot of players will go down and fight Kraid first, as more like the intended boss order, but it's actually faster to come up here and grab these power bombs and then go do the second boss first. That's what we're going to go do here. The tricky part about this is I do not have very much health, and things deal a lot of damage here, especially because I don't have the Varia Suit. The Varia Suit actually cuts damage in half. The thing's going to be doing twice as much damage as they would do for someone playing the game casually, and I only have 1 energy tank here. I have 132 health right now, and I'm going to be fighting Phantoon. Phantoon does 40 damage per hit without any suits, so the fight is actually rather scary if you're not well versed in it. There's not much room for error. But before that, we have to get across the moat, which is rather infamous here. Because usually you're supposed to have grapple beam to get across. Oh, okay, so that's a frame perfect jump I just did. Ah, I missed it. So there's a way to get across called the CWJ, or the continuous wall jump. If you jump off the ledge on the last frame possible, you have 2 frames to do a wall jump off the pedestal there, which I missed the 2-frame window. I got the 1-frame window. Otherwise, you can just back it up with an HBJ, or you can just fall in. This is what gives a lot of new players trouble with this route. Goodness. There we go. Oof. It's hard to do while talking. So that's the backup to get across compared to the continuous wall jump. It's slightly slower than the continuous wall jump, but it's not a 1-frame into 2-frame trick, so it's rather unfortunate that I missed the easier of the frame windows. I missed the 2-frame jump, but that 2-frame jump's also tricky because you're coming out of an item fanfare, which is like 6, almost 7 seconds. And you have to hit a 2-frame window kind of out of nowhere. But that's okay. We have much bigger things to worry about now. This is Phantoon. So Phantoon is going to come around and weave around the room in figure 8s, and he's going to open his eye. And when he opens his eye, he releases 8 flames in a circle, and you can shoot all those flames at once, and that's the goal, because you want to shoot all 8 of those flames at once in order to avoid them, obviously, and then they give you drops and stuff. And then what we're going to do is a thing called a Doppler. Basically, if you're hitting Phantoon with missiles at a rate faster than you're allowed to fire them, basically, by running into him, my missiles are hitting him faster than the rate at which Samus can fire missiles normally, and what it does is it kind of stun locks him in place. You can get him a lot more missiles than you're able to. Ah, shoot. And that's what happens if you miss. Now he's going to go invisible and then do a pattern while invisible. I just kind of got to deal with that. Okay. I got slow, slow, invisible, slow. That's pretty bad in terms of luck. But that fight's pretty tricky because things deal a lot of damage. And you have to really know what you're doing in order to avoid taking all that extra damage. But now that he's dead, things get pretty nice and comfy. We're gonna make our way to the gravity suit, which is the most overpowered suit in the game. Because you're not necessarily supposed to be getting it before the Varia suit. It kind of gives you, almost all the protections that Varia does, except for one. And I'll get into that one protection it doesn't give you later, because it is important. But basically this means that the gravity suit is going to give me heat protection as well. And I don't need the Varia suit to go through heated rooms, as long as I have the gravity suit. Which is going to be nice, because we're going to be going down to Norfair next, before fighting Kraid. So we're going to want that heat protection to be able to do Norfair. This is called the Attic. Pretty straightforward room. You kind of have to kill everything in order to get through the room, obviously. So if they have power bomb to kill some stuff, then you use ammo to kill the rest. Now here we have to get through bowling. These spikes each deal 60 damage every hit, and you need to take at least 2 hits to get through them. So if you're low on health, this can be scary, but we have an extra hit, so it's not too bad. And this is obviously, we call him the Bowling Torizo, because he looks like he's about to roll Samus as a bowling ball. This is one of the few little breaks you get in your run, pretty It's pretty early on anyway. And it's kind of waiting through this cutscene. There are ways to skip this cutscene, but none of them really would end up saving you much time, and they involve a lot of frame-perfect pauses, and it's just a mess to try and skip the cutscene, so it's not really worth it to even try. Now with the gravity suit, we're going to try and make our way to Ridley, but on the way to Ridley, we're going to pick up some extra firepower and some items to speed up the rooms on the way to Ridley. I mean, like, technically we have all the equipment we would need to go down and fight Ridley right now, but it would be rather slow, because our charge shot right now only deals 60 damage, and Ridley is 18,000, so I'd rather not be doing 200 plus shots on Ridley, plus my ammo. I'm going to be picking up some extra firepower and stuff to speed up the fight considerably. In this upper Norfair section here, you're never in any danger of dying, but in terms of execution, it's definitely the hardest. Not necessarily the hardest, but it's definitely one of the hardest sections to execute properly. There's a lot of tricky platforming and stuff that is really hard to get it all perfect every time. These moonfalls here aren't easy either. And those moonfalls are saving me less than a second each. That's a nice super. It's about 2%. So here I'm going to pick up Spazer. This is something that the newer route diverges from the old route. The old route, duping the bosses in the quote intended order, is picking up Spazer here. We're not going to be picking up the Plasma Beam, so Spazer is going to actually add on a ton of extra damage to our charge shot. That is going to be very useful for dealing with bosses rather somewhat quickly. Excuse me. The boss fights are still going to take quite a while, but they're not going to take nearly as long. And this tube here, we're going to break it ahead of time, just because it saves some time to break it now. We'll be coming back there later. So we're going to come down to the business center. There are a lot of different ways we can go. We're going to pick up the high jump boots and the ice beam, and then we're going to make our way over to Bubble Mountain to pick up the speed booster. And then from there, go to Lower Norfair. A lot of these sections in here, though, super missiles are going to be very important, because super missiles deal double damage to Ridley. So throughout this entire section, I'm going to be trying to farm as many of these Sovas as I can, see if I can get some lucky super missile drops, like that one. That's a really nice drop. The Sovas have about a 1 in 5 to drop a super missile, so I mean, it's not super likely, but you can kill them pretty quickly without having to waste too much time. So it's pretty worthwhile to farm a few of them up. Okay, so this is going to be an important thing. So here I jumped high there because it's what we colloquially refer to as a door fix. So doors in this game, when you go through them, they have to center on the screen before they transition. And if they have to do that manually, it takes a long time. So what we do is in certain rooms, the way we move through them is a manner in which we manipulate the camera to try and manually center the door. Which can save, time in some rooms. It can save, 20, 30 frames sometimes. Usually it's only like 5 to 10 frames they save, but some of them even save like upwards of a second. So door fixing is pretty important. I'll point, there's some more like later where you can point them out. This next one coming up is one you can get perfectly, but it's kind of tricky. So you see how the door has to like center before it transitions? So the idea is we try to do that with our own movements, so it doesn't have to do that on its own, because when it does it on its own, it does it really slowly. That's fine. This one right here, I jumped through that one to fix it. And it wastes a lot of time in this room to do that, but it saves a considerable amount of time on that door. So it's definitely worth it to do it. If you did that room without fixing that door at all, if you did that room without fixing that door at all, you could waste seconds just on that door transition alone, because that one can get really bad with the camera. So that's a really important door transition to worry about. But most of the other ones are pretty small in certain other things, so... So here we're just going to farm up for some super missiles. My count's pretty good, so I'm just going to go after my second farm overall. And we're going to make our way down to Ridley. But first we're also going to pick up the Wave Beam. Wave Beam's pretty important as well in terms of dealing some extra damage. And it also lets us do a special beam attack called the X Factor. I'm also going to be picking up these missiles here for safety. Generally, in a run, you'd see a lot of top players just jump over this missile pack and skip it, but that leaves your ammo pretty tight for the end game, and it can cause you to soft lock rather easily, so picking up the safety is definitely worthwhile in a marathon run. And, oh, another thing to mention about the speed booster I just picked up. So the game, to give you the blue echoes, it only checks during a specific frame of Samus's running animation if you're holding the run button. And it does this check 4 times. And once it reaches 4, you get the blue echoes, the blue suit, right? So what you can do is you can tap the run button so that it's being held on those 4 frames, but you're not holding it as long in order to get a charge in a shorter amount of distance. It's referred to as a short charge. So what I'm going to be doing coming up here is I'm going to use a lot of the techniques in this game in conjunction, the short charge and the D-boost, in order to get down to Lower Norfair here without the space jump. Just like that. It's called Lava Spark. And I'm going to pause and take off my Spazer and Ice Beam. Some players don't do this. It's basically I'm going to be using the X Factors, the special beam attack on Ridley. So what X Factors are is if you have Power Bomb selected, and then only 1 beam plus Charge Beam equipped, and you hold a charge, the game will use that Power Bomb as a special beam attack. And the X Factor is pretty useful here with Wave Beam because it deals quite a bit of damage. This right here is worst room in the game, as it's referred to, and for good reason. I'm going to be using a power bomb here to break the blocks up top, and then the thing about power bombs is they give enemies iframes, because if they didn't give enemies iframes, they'd be hitting enemies every frame and just one-shot everything. But the thing about giving an enemy iframes is while an enemy has iframes, you can just run right through it without taking any damage. So I gave the pirates iframes in order to just go right through them and get through that room. Because my equipment right now is really weak. I don't deal like any damage at all. Which is also why I'm doing this Shine Spark right here. Because when Samus does a Shine Spark, you see those 2 copies of Samus that just kind of go away from her? Those copies of Samus deal 4096 damage per frame. So if you hit enemies with them, it pretty much just one-shots them. And it's one of the few ways in which I can deal with enemies down here. Okay, I got it. So there's a manipulation for those hoppers, and I messed up the first one, but I was able to fix it with the backup. Basically, you want that first hopper to jump high, and you can manipulate it based on how you bomb those blocks out. So here's another spot we're going to be using those Shine Spark Echoes to kill some enemies. But basically, every enemy down here does a ton of damage, and they have a lot of health. And I have very little health and deal very little damage. So there aren't very many nice ways to deal with them. Oh, that's not good. Okay. That's damage I didn't want to take. Okay, so this is going to get a little scary. So I'm going to be coming into Ridley and using an X Factor. I'm doing a second one where I take 40 damage on purpose. I'm coming down to 111 on purpose here. Six, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ah, shoot. I guess I miscounted. Okay. That's Ridley. Supers deal double damage. Each of those particles deal 300 damage, and my charge shots deal 300 damage. And Ridley has 18,000 health. So, you know, it's not an easy fight. I'm going to pick up this energy tank here because it's a marathon run, and I also got pretty poor health drops. Generally, in runs, people would just not pick up that energy tank, but that makes this section rather scary. Escaping Lorne Warfare is not easy because, again, I don't deal much damage at all, and things have a lot of health, and they also deal a lot of damage. So the best way to get through these rooms coming up is to, some of it's to take damage on purpose, and in other aspects you try to dodge the enemies, and dodging these enemies is not easy. I'm pretty sure I missed that in every marathon ever. So the idea there is that Mach Ball earlier, that preserves your run speed, that also preserves your blue suit. So the idea there was to do a short charge into a Mach Ball, and then use the blue suit to kill out those bomb blocks. But here, oh, that's I messed up. We're trying to dodge these key hunters because they deal 50 damage, and that's not good with how little health I have. And I also can't really kill them in any reasonable amount of time. So the best way to do it is to just dodge them. Again, generally in runs, I am like, I have like 150 less health here. So this is pretty comfy, but it's pretty scary in runs, having pretty much no health. Just trying to dodge these guys is not easy. So from here, we're going to make our way to Kraid and pick up the Varia Suit. So we're going to need the Varia Suit because Mother Brain has an undodgeable attack that if you don't have the Varia Suit, it deals 2 damage per frame, and if you have the Varia Suit, it deals 1 damage per frame, and it deals 300 damage. And it's undodgeable, it's scripted, so we pretty much have to pick up the Varia Suit here, unless we want to pick up just a ton of extra E-tanks, which is really slow. So the idea is, this is the one thing that is the reason we need to get the Varia Suit, even though the Gravity Suit gives us the heat protection. And the main reason we do Kraid now is because we have Speed Booster, and having Speed Booster lets us get through this section a lot more quickly than if we didn't have Speed Booster. On top of which, it's going to cap off our Super Missiles here for Meridia, because Super Missiles are pretty important in Meridia. And so Mini Kraid here is going to give us a nice refill. A charge shot there. There's Kraid's little like toenails, or whatever that he shoots at you. There's one hidden below the ground there at the start of the fight, and if you can kill it, you can save some lag. Saves a good chunk of time. Oh, what's the damage boost? Now here's Meridia. This section is one of the tougher sections in the run. There's a lot of tricky movement, a lot of nice little tricks in it. So first we're just going to leave Kraid's Lair. My ammo's sitting really pretty. But basically, you want a lot of ammo for Phantoon, and then you also want a lot of ammo for Dragon, without really any spots in between to get it, which is another reason why doing Kraid now is really nice. Because now I'm nice and capped off on super missiles. Also, full health here is pretty rare. I did get the extra E-Tank, but generally I'd only have 2 E-Tanks here and be kind of hurting for health. So this is I just got the last frame jump. Whoops. That's a nice little, like, saves like a second to get a frame perfect jump there. And we're going to spark our way up the Mount Everest and make our way to Phantoon. So coming up on Phantoon, I'm going to try and do a cool little double X Factor strat, using 2 X Factors instead of 1. This is just mainly to save super missiles, because super missiles are really important for Meridia and for Turian coming up. Okay, that's the only pattern where there isn't a 2 X Factor setup. In every marathon, I have to go for the 2 X Factors. I get the 1 pattern that you can't do it on. So, there's no reason for me to get the C-Tank here, technically, because I got the Ridley tank and I'm full, but there's also no reason not for me to get it, because it's a marathon, and I'd rather not die to the final boss, so... That's the full halfie. It was originally thought that you could only get the spark across half the room, so it was called the halfie. And then, because then the full halfie was considered like some tool-assisted tech, like people didn't think real-time runners could do it, so there was the halfie. And then eventually real-time runners got good enough to do the full halfie, or to get across the full room, so they decided, okay, well, let's just call it the full halfie, which is a pretty unique and weird name for it, but that's the full halfie. And it's pretty standard these days in a lot of top runs. It's not actually too bad. The Dragon takes damage from Shine Sparks, so I'm going to be using a combination of X Factors and Shine Sparks to deal with her really quickly. And I got the bad pattern, which loses like 3 seconds. But basically, Dragon actually takes half damage from Shine Sparks. But you can deal with her really quickly with them. And that's a trick called Spike Suit. It's a 2 frame into a 1 frame. And what it does is it lets me continue to run here, and I have a Shine Spark stored, which lets me get out of Dragon's room really quickly. And I have a Shine Spark stored here that I can just use to get across this room. So the thing about Spike Suit is you basically have to unmorph on either the frame you take damage or the frame before you take damage, and then you have to activate a Shine Spark 10 frames after you unmorph when you're knocked back. Well, yeah, 10 frames afterwards. The thing is there's a frame window where you can activate it too early, and then you just lose your blue suit and your Spike Suit, and your run's pretty much, you just lose a ton of time. So it's a 2 frame trick, and it's a 2 frame window into a 1 frame window. And then there's a chance that it just ends your run if you miss it in a specific way. Right at the end here. It was a little unfortunate, but... I'm gonna use a power bomb here to farm these Zebos here, leaving Meridia, just to hopefully get a super missile or 2. And my super missile count's pretty good, actually. Generally, you have a lot less than this in any percent. But for Turian coming up, you need a lot of super missiles, because Mother Brain 1 only takes damage from only takes damage from ammo, excuse me. It doesn't take damage from your charge shots or your beam or anything. So you need a specific amount of ammo in order to beat the game. And there's no place to really refill your super missiles after the Metroids, so your super count's really important here. And there's a balancing act of trying to use your supers, because supers kill Metroids really quickly, or trying to, conserve your super missiles. Okay, so this is G4. Basically, once you kill all the bosses, you come here, and the boss statues kind of got to explode. This is about, like 50 seconds where I just kind of get to chill towards the end of your run, which is nice, but it also stinks, because you just get to sit there and wallow in the fact that you're on pace for 50 seconds with nothing to do. And Turian coming up is one of the hardest and most punishing sections if you make mistakes in. It's very easy to completely just die, or just to mess up a trick coming up called Baby Skip, which you lose like 30 seconds if you mess it up, so your run's just dead. So it's, blessing and a curse to have this here. So what I'm going to be doing here, though, in the Metroid rooms, is I'm going to be trying to group the Metroids together so that I can kill them with only one super. So I can kill multiple Metroids with one super missile. This is just to like save supers in order to give me a better chance at being full after the Metroids. If I didn't pick up that safety missile pack earlier, if I didn't leave the Metroids with 15 and 10, I would have to refill and lose time. And then even then, I would have to be perfect on Mother Brain 1. So, we're just going to try and group them here. And hopefully I get some good drops. So I just killed 3 of them with 1 super there, which is really nice. Okay, so I'm getting some pretty decent drops. This is not too bad. I don't know why that happens sometimes, but it does, and it's annoying. Whoops, I morphed. Okay, so 20 and 10 is just fine. This is pretty safe. I have room to miss shots on Mother Brain 1. So here I'm going to be doing what's called Baby Skip. The baby Metroid's going to try and grab you. It's going to drain your health to 0, and that's really slow. What you can do is you can manipulate its movement and kind of jump around it to try and get through the rest of this room before it grabs you. There we go. Pretty nice and easy there. So here's what makes really this run pretty quick in terms of speed, is the Zebetite skip. So there's Zebetites that you have to kill with ammo coming up, but only one of them spawns at a time, which is really nice for us, because there's a way to skip past the first one. Just like that. So now the next ones don't spawn, and we have a lot of ammo. Those turrets in the top right, little like turret shots they shoot actually can block your missiles and super missiles, which is bad, because if they block them, if you go on minimum ammo and they block either a single missile or a single super missile, your run's over. So it's really important to not get blocked there. The Mother Brain here is 60 shots. There's not much to it. I'm gonna have to be counting here though, so I'm gonna try to be quiet, because it's rather important that I know where I'm at. I think I lost my spot though. Okay. I kind of lost my spot, but that's okay, because it worked out. But basically, that red beam attack that she does deals an entire E-tank of damage. It's actually also, since it's multiple hitboxes, it's not one long hitbox, it's multiple different hitboxes, it can actually double hit you and hit you twice, which is bad, because I need at least 301 energy to survive the scripted attack there. So if I got double hit by a red beam there, my round's over. But generally, in attempts and stuff, you only get 3 E-tanks, so if you get hit by that attack at all, your run just dies. So, and she doesn't do that attack until she's at less than 75% health. So it's really important to have an idea of where you're at in terms of how many times you've hit her, so that you know when the attack's going to be coming. Because if you don't know when it's going to be coming, it's a lot trickier to dodge than if you do. So, I guess we're going to kill it off, or I guess we're going to cut it off here then for kill. Save and kill, because it's coming up. It looks like kill the animals ended up winning, which I'm happy about. Makes my run faster. But here's pretty much the only breather where you can just breathe a sigh of relief for a little bit in this run, I feel like. I mean, yeah, there's still a lot of potential to lose your run in Zeeb's Escape, but the potential to just like die and not be able to finish outright is gone pretty much. So this is kind of the one spot where you have a bit of like a breather, because especially with this route, it's intense the whole way through. You're running through Lower Norfair with no health, you're running through... everything is on a knife's edge here. Because like, as I was saying earlier on Mother Brain 1, generally you're running minimum ammo, right? So you have no room for mistakes. Like one missed shot, one turret blocking your shot, ends your run. So like the entire run is just like one mistake away from pretty much just dying. And as also the frame perfect trick that I was talking about earlier, leaving Dragon and stuff, like pretty much just your entire run for almost the entirety of the speedrun is one mistake away from just being completely over. So having a nice little time to just take a breather and be like, okay, I've gotten past all the hard stuff is really nice with those cutscenes. But from here it's pretty straightforward. You just gotta escape Zebes, Zeebs pretty quickly here. And then we're gonna see the last moonfall of the run as well. There aren't very many, but this one is one of the ones that actually saves a good chunk of time. This one saves about a second and a half. We're going to spark up through the climb here, and just make our way to the ship, and it's going to be time when Samus is facing forward on the ship here. Yeah, that's time. That's Super Metroid any percent. A bit of a hiccup there in the moat, but the rest of the run went pretty smoothly. I got to show off... I did go quiet during Ridley. I'd have rather been able to talk during Ridley, but I made a mistake on the way to Ridley and got some pretty unfortunate drops, so my health was pretty bad entering Ridley, so I took it a little bit quiet just to make sure I didn't die, because that would have been a little unfortunate to die. 43-41, really? That actually surprises me. With like a minute in the moat, slow, extra safeties, it's not too bad. I'll take that for sure. But yeah, that's Super Metroid. 80%'s a really cool run, I think, because it's based, like, the entire thing is one mistake away from death. It makes it really fun to run, it makes it really rewarding to do well, and it makes it incredible to watch. Like, even small mistakes can really snowball into large mistakes. throughout the Norfair and the Meridia sections, because it's like, oh, you get hit once in Norfair, now your health's bad for Ridley, you know, and then leaving Lower Norfair, you have no room to make mistakes. You're usually leaving without health to really make mistakes and take damage, because otherwise you just die. So there really is no downtime in the run at all. Yeah, we can let the credits play for the Deer Force, or we can, you know, go on to the next one, whatever you want. I made my estimate a little bit long, so let the credits play out, because it's generally something people like. This game's got a really nice credits theme. And it's really satisfying to just watch these credits, I think. They're not too long, about 3 minutes or so it's really nice. The other thing that's just fantastic about this game is just the depth of it too for a 2D platformer from 1994, right? There's so much, the hitbox manipulation is everywhere. There's so much more that I wish I could have talked about, but I just don't have the time because it moves too quickly. If I sat down and was able to talk about everything I wanted to talk about that just went on right now, I'd be here for like 3 hours. Like, there's just so much going on that I couldn't even get to. That makes this such a cool and interesting speed game from that perspective, as well as just from the perspective of the run being incredibly intense the whole way through. Shoutouts to Gear Force of Team Shikamaru for making a fantastic video game. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. 21%.